All right, boys and girls, we're going to start reading a new story. This week it's called Charlotte's Web. Raise your hand if you've ever read Charlotte's Web before. Raise your hand. Yeah. What is Charlotte's Web? What do you know about Charlotte's Web? What is it about?
Charlotte is a spider. And she meets a pig named Wilbur.
Okay. What do you know, Brianna?
Well, Wilbur's a runt pig, and Fern's dad wants to kill him for bacon, so Fern says no. If he was a smaller little, he wanted to be killed. So he sent him to the Zuckerman's place, and then the goose told him that they're gonna, during Christmas, they're gonna fat him up and eat him.
Okay. Well, you are all correct. Look, Charlotte's Web. What can you see? I see spider webs.
Goose.
I see the
Fern.
goose. I see Fern. What is the pig's name?
Wilbur.
Wilbur. What do you see?
A lion or a sheep.
Yep, the sheep. Alright, so before we start reading, we're going to learn some new vocabulary words, words that you probably haven't seen before, you don't know about. So in front of us, you'll find an alpha block sort. Does everybody see their alpha block sort? So when we learn a new vocabulary word, we're going to write our vocabulary word in the what? Where do you think you're going to write it?
In box.
In the box with what? Where?
With the letter starts.
The letter starts with. If you'd like, you could draw a little picture next to it to help remind you of that word. But today we're only going to do vocabulary from chapters 1 and 2 because that's all that we're reading today, okay? So, our first word. I got ahead of myself. It's okay. It's okay. Alright, our first word is what? Litter. Litter is a number of young brought forth by an animal at one birth. So cats have a litter. They have up to 6 babies. Pigs have a litter. So let's go ahead and write that word down in the correct box. You can draw a little picture beside it. Alright, litter. Alright, let's look at the next word. Alright, enchanted. Enchanted. Let's go ahead and write that down in our alpha block. Enchanted is to delight to a high degree. Like Ella enchanted. Who's ever heard the word enchanted? It means that you're delighted by someone. That you're like, oh. Yes.
I've seen the movie.
What, Ella Enchanted? Did you like it?
Yes.
Yeah. Alright. So we're gonna start reading our story. Chapters 1 and 2. We'll stop in the midst of the chapters and we'll ask some questions. If there's any new words that you hear in the story that you don't know what they mean, you can write them in your alpha block sort, okay? So, chapter 1. Where's Papa going with that axe? Said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Out to the hog house, replied Miss Arable. Some pigs were born last night. I don't see why he needs an axe, continued Fern, who was only 8. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is runt. It is very small and weak. It will never amount to anything, so your father has decided to do away with it. Do away with it, shrieked Fern. You mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others? Miss Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right. The pig would probably die anyway." Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. What do you think the word sopping means in the text? Soak, like soaking wet. You're right. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you will have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself," yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death. And you talk about controlling myself." Tears ran down her cheeks as she took hold of an axe and tried to put it out of her father's hand. "Fern," said Mr. Arable, "I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it?" "If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard." A weird look came from John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said, "you go back to the house and I'll bring the runt when I come in. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." When Mr. Arable returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a cartoon under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelled of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it in her chair," said Miss Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red from crying as she approached her chair. The carton wobbled, and there was a weird scratching noise. Fern looked at her father, then she lifted the lid of the carton. There, inside, looking up at her, was the newborn pig. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its ears, turning them pink. "He's yours," said Mr. Arable, "saved from an untimely death. And may the good Lord forgive me for this foolishness." Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. "Oh," she whispered, "oh, look at him. He's absolutely perfect." She closed the carton carefully. First she kissed her father, then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again, lifted the pig out, and held it against her cheek. At this moment, her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. He was heavily armed, an air rifle in one hand, a wooden dagger in the other. "What's that?" he demanded. "What's Fern got?" "She's got a guest for breakfast," said Miss Arable. "Wash your hands and face, Avery." "Let's see it," said Avery, setting the gun down. "You call that miserable thing a pig? That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a white rat." "Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery," said his mother. "The school bus will be along in half an hour." "Can I have a pig too, Pop?" asked Avery. "No, I only distribute pigs to early risers," said Mr. Arable. Fern was up at daylight trying to rid the world of injustice. As a result, she now has a pig. A small one, but nevertheless a pig. It just shows what can happen if a person gets out of bed promptly. Let's eat. But Fern couldn't eat until her pig had had a drink of milk. Miss Arable found a baby's nursing bottle and a rubber nipple. She poured warm milk into the bottle, fitted the nipple over top, and handed it to Fern. "Give him his breakfast." Can I see it? A minute later, Fern was seated on the floor in the corner of the kitchen with her infant between her knees, teaching it to suck from a bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a good appetite and caught on quickly. The school bus honked from the road. "Run," commanded Miss Arable, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a donut into her hand. Avery grabbed his gun and another donut. The children ran out to the road and climbed into the bus. Fern took no notice of the others in the bus. She just sat and stared out of the window, thinking what a blissful world it was and how lucky she was to have entire charge of a pig. By the time the bus reached school, Fern had named her pig, selecting the most beautiful name she could think of. Its name is Wilbur, she whispered to herself. She was still thinking about that pig when the teacher said, Fern, what's the capital of Pennsylvania? Wilbur? Replied Fern dreamily. The pupils giggled. Fern blushed.